You know that's not true.
They're referring to the opinions of America, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Australia, New Zealand.
That is not true.
My friend, China never focuses on its international unity. It's outside of the realm. That's why the West was so angry with France for breaking the unwritten rule of working in the interest of the West. When France opposed the war in Iraq, when Russia opposed the war in Iraq, when Germany opposed the war in Iraq. Look at how angry America became. Might be Saddam.
It might be Osama.
Have you seen the one?
Well, you have, since you believe he's dead.
Look at it for what it's worth, my friend. Understand it. They were so angry with France, the Americans. Now look at it. The world's greatest superpower. Angry with France. So when France says, we will not vote with you in the war in Iraq, what did the Americans say? We're going to bomb you? No. Did they say we're going to nuke you? No. Did they say we're going to impose sanctions against you? No. They said, look at the French. That's it. No more French fries in the White House.
Oh, come on. It was DOD.
No more French dressing.
It was DOD, my friend. Come on.
Americans, they're so
in the
stupid.
canteen. Come on.
They didn't even recognize that the French dressing was made in America. The French fries were made by American potatoes. That's how fucked up this arrogant American position is. And I'm not anti-American.
Oh, yes, you are, Ishmahil.
Oh, you're right. I am.
And God bless America.
I actually consider myself more anti-American foreign policy.
You're not, Ishmahil.
I actually believe that many Americans are anti-American foreign policy. I remember
That's true. That's true.
speaking in this park for 20 years. When the Americans went to Iraq in 2003, every time I would ask in the park, hands up, those of you who are Americans. And out of the audience, you might get 8 or 9 people put their hand up. When I asked those Americans, hands up those who support the war, 8 or so out of the 9 agreed with the war, believed they were doing something right. Let's do that test now. Hands up those of you Americans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep your hands up if you believe the war in Iraq is right. Can you see? He's not American, he's Nigerian, aspiring to be an American.
All I want is go to Georgetown, my friend. All I want to do is just go to Georgetown. That's
The
all.
arguments against the war, the arguments against the war are not black or white.
How do you define the war?
Great.
It's not even, when you look at it, capitalism versus communism. Because as we know, communism
Evil against
what we're
good.
looking at is the growth of empire.
Oh, come on,
What we're
Ishmahil.
looking at is the expansion of empire. What we're looking at is the US government with 800 military bases around the world. Now let's look at the advent of the war of 2001. The Americans said, we are going to Afghanistan to get Osama bin Laden and to rid Afghanistan of Al-Qaeda.
And the Taliban.
The Taliban weren't even on the radar.
Oh, yes, they were, Ishmahil.
Incidentally, the Americans said that they wanted Osama bin Laden from Afghanistan. I don't blame the Taliban for not handing him over. Why? Because the Taliban did what every government in the world would do.
What, harbor a criminal?
No. The Taliban said, present us with the evidence that you have.
And they had the evidence, Ishmahil. And they saw the evidence, Ishmahil. And they saw the evidence, Ishmahil. They're now declassified by CIA documents. I brought them to the park for you to peruse, but you refuse, Ishmahil. And I gave you George Taylor's memoirs. They're in there, Ishmahil. Yes. So come on.
The Taliban asked for the information to be presented to them.
And they got
they
it.
would consider the extradition.
And they got
Now,
it.
if we
And
look
what did
at-
they do? They wanted a deal. What did they do? They wanted a deal. We give you Osama, you recognize.
We look at Bin Laden. Bin Laden is a terrorist. Bin Laden should be on trial. And I'm going to get into the growth of Islamic radicalism later. But let's look at America, where we also have terrorists. Under the guise of Henry Kissinger.
Come on.
Henry Kissinger instigated
A great statesman.
May I finish? Eisenhower. Let's look at how the Vietnam War started, which claimed the lives of 2 million Vietnamese. which claimed the lives of 1 million Cambodians, which, incidentally, more bombs were dropped on Laos in Southeast Asia than were dropped collectively throughout the Second World War. That is a war crime we very rarely discuss.
No.
Now let me get to it. Why did the Americans invade Vietnam? Because Eisenhower at the time said that anyone who is versed in Indo-Chinese affairs knows that Ho Chi Minh would garner at least 80% of the electorate. So they recognized that a communist government, whether they liked it or not, would have been elected democratically. The crimes of Henry Kissinger. On September the 11th, not 2001, but on September the 11th, 1973, Salvador Allende, the democratically elected president of Chile, was overthrown and murdered upon the say-so of Henry Kissinger. We look at the war in Iraq and Iran. We look at how Oliver North was the fall guy for the war in Iraq between Iran and Iraq. The setting of arms between Nicaragua.
Old history, Ishmael.
And let's look at Colin Powell. Colin Powell was not the one who gave orders. Colin Powell wasn't responsible for drafting up policies or ideas. Who was Colin Powell's direct line manager? Oliver North's direct line manager was General Colin Powell. However, Colin Powell was the Americans' most decorated black officer, and so to protect his career, they made Oliver North the fall guy.
So it's got to be a fall guy.
There has to be a fall guy. So when we talk about Bin Laden, where did Bin Laden come from? What is Bin Laden's military, political, or even religious pedigree? Bin Laden is just a rich, spoiled Saudi.
Happens to be a terrorist.
He didn't happen to be a terrorist.
Who happens to be a terrorist?
Bin Laden was encouraged to be a terrorist.
Oh, really?
Let's look at this.
You.
He had all the money in the world to do what he liked. Wealthy, one of the wealthiest Saudi families. Hold on. Let's look at the growth of Bin Laden, because there were many Bin Ladens before Bin Laden. The American government was fighting against communism. The Russians had invaded Afghanistan. The Americans were terrified of communism spreading throughout the Islamic world, because socialism was on a foot, spreading throughout Africa, spreading throughout Asia, spreading throughout the Middle East. So the Americans encouraged, trained, armed, and financed radical Islamist organizations, because they realized that these radical Islamist organizations, they didn't want communism, they didn't want even capitalism, they didn't want democracy, they didn't want egalitarianism, they wanted Islam. And the Americans recognized that by encouraging these people, nothing would settle on the soil with radical Islamists. It wasn't just Bin Laden. So look at it for what it is worth. Why did Bin Laden switch against his paymaster? Wasn't Bin Laden working with America?
Rubbish, Ishmael. And it's Arab propaganda. Anyone who works in a field, who works in a community, knows that's false, Ishmael. And it's a disgrace on your part. You know that's not true, Ishmael.
Let me explain.
There's no evidence to suggest that.
Let me explain, and let me use your stupidity.
No, not use mine. Use the facts that we know, Ishmael.
Let's use the facts.
Yeah.
The Taliban,
not supposition.
Let's look at the Taliban. The Taliban's strength, financially, economically, recognizing that Afghanistan is one of the poorest countries on earth. Where did the Taliban receive finance from?
Pakistani. America.
They received their backing from Saudi Arabia.
And Pakistan.
They received military intelligence from the ISI, Pakistan's military intelligence unit. Do you deny this?
Yes.
Do you deny this?
No.
No. You don't.
But not America.
Hold on. Now, where and how were funds channeled to Al-Qaeda and the Taliban? Under the Mujahideen. You point over there. Why? Because you're pointing to Edgware Road, where the headquarters of the BCCI,
Who was the manager? A Muslim, right? A Saudi.
The CIA actively and openly funded the ISI, knowing that the funds would go direct from the ISI. It's called deniability.
No, plausible deniability.
Oh, you know it very well. You know it very well. So you can't deny it even ever happened. Because we recognize that the ISI were used as a conduit. How is
We
it?
don't know that,
Think
Ishmael.
about this. We do not know.
We don't know
You're
that.
right. Stupid people don't know that.
It's all
Intelligent
conjecture,
people do know
Ishmael.
that.
Come on.